Hello and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwak Amimo. Now, Operation Usalama entered its third week with no let-up in outpourings of support on the one hand and concern on the other. In the concerned corner are religious leaders, both Muslim and Christian, leaders from the ethnic Somali community and from the coast, the opposition and activists. They say that Somalis and coastal people are being unfairly targeted, their basic human rights breached. In the support corner are officials from every arm of government, victims of terrorism here in Kenya, and the general public fed up of the growing insecurity. And so today, we'll hear the arguments for and against the operation from, the Senate Majority Leader Kithure Kindiki. He'd confirmed that he'd be here, and we're still expecting him. And former Deputy Speaker Farah Maalim, who is here with us. Mutegi Njau of Royal Media Services and David McCarley are in the studio as well. You know them as the Cheche panel. Good morning and welcome to Cheche. So you've been out of the public eye since you left Parliament, but your opposition to Operation Usalama has brought you back. Why are you opposed to this operation? What are your concerns?
My biggest concern, first and foremost, is the security, the national security of our country, because we do not have any other country. And my other concern is that we are actually proliferating terrorism through this operation. The operation does not aspire to solve the problem, to nap the actual terrorists themselves. It has profiled the Muslims, it has profiled Somalis and the people of Swahili Arab extraction in the coast, and it has been a mayhem. The kind of devastation of the society itself is something I think reports or human rights reports are going to, when they make them public, is going to make this whole country shocked, and the international community too. Because in excess of 300,000 Somalis have been targeted, have had their houses raided by the police, have had their money taken from them, extortions, have had women's golds and jewelries and other valuables taken from them. So it's something that essentially should not be happening in a civilized society at this age. It's very primitive.
You talk about ethnic profiling, and yet we know that Kenya has been targeted for terrorism, and that threat came from Somalia itself, the country. It came from ethnic Somalis. So would it not make sense, if you say that there is profiling, for any sort of investigation or check or swoop, whatever word you want to use, investigating these threats, to look first within the ethnic Somali community and within the wider Muslim faith?
Actually, the first part of your statement itself, I want to correct you. The terrorists do not have the face of Somalis. All the terrorists who have been arrested and nabbed in this place or killed in some cases, in excess of 80% of them were non-Somalis. They were Luyas, they were Luos, they were Kikuyus, they were Kambas. They were literally every ethnic community.
And the argument could be made, as you say, that certainly these people were non-Somalis, but the argument could be made that they were from other ethnicities who were radicalized, who were converted to Islam and taken to Somalia for training.
Precisely, precisely. The point is, the fact that one needs to know is that the Al-Shabaab itself in Somalia has never been led by a Somali for a very long time, up until maybe around this time. There was Fazul. Fazul was a Comorian, Mungazija, who has lived in Kenya and who was, like any other Kenyan from the Coast Province. There was Saleh Nabhan, who was not a Somali, but also was a Kenyan. And all these Kenyans who finished universities in this country, educated, brilliant young men, and went to Somalia. So it's a question of Somalia could be the staging ground. It could be the place where these recruitments are being done and where the training is being done. But who are the people who are doing it? This is something that needs to be investigated. One has to get to the root of it. And I think it's not beyond the reach of the Kenyan intelligence for them to know exactly what goes on there. In this day and age, when we have the most sophisticated communication things, Al-Shabaab is concentrated in a small region of Somalia in terms of leadership called the Merka area. We have the KDF in Kismayu and in Somalia itself. Any communication coming out of that place can easily be traced. It does easily get traced actually by our intelligence. They can find a way of following every person until he comes through the border, until he is...
Why do you think that hasn't been done?
Because I don't think the government has the intention to fight terrorism. I think the government wants terrorism to flourish and to proliferate in this country.
Okay, that's a very strong allegation.
Very strong allegation. Two things. One, we've had our own issues. We've had our issues of genocide in the country here when the two principals themselves are actually the International Criminal Court. We have not been in the best books of the West. I think the position in our country right now, and even before, in the last coalition government, although it could only be done by a part of it, was the way to charm our way back into the Western favor, the Europeans, the Americans, and the countries that we have traditionally had relationships with, if we can have a common enemy. And the one enemy that the West easily gets drawn into, easily gets sucked into, is when you talk about Islamic fundamentalism, Islamic terrorism. If that terrorism does exist, then fair enough, it's good. If it doesn't exist, create it. Let me tell you something.
And so you're accusing the Kenyan government of manufacturing Islamic fundamentalism?
Well, having one, when you see, you can be guilty of a certain offense by commission or omission. There's a serious omission, in my opinion, and I don't think even some of the bombs and some of the grenades that were thrown and the people who were killed by Muslims. For example, the Likoni church. We've been told 2 people have been killed. You can rest assured if those 2 people were Muslims with Somali faces or Swahili faces, they would be splashed on our media the following day. They never told us who they were. They could easily take their fingerprints and tell us they were so and so. Information we have is that they were not Muslims. They were non-Muslims. The same thing also with the cafeteria incident that happened in Sli. The cafeteria owner said they did not look like they were Somalis. And these are people who did it. And many other things that have happened. All those, the bombs that were going off in Matatus and the rest of it. We've never been shown a Somali and told this is a Somali or this is the Muslim, prosecuted, convicted, with tons and tons of what you call evidence there, and nothing like that. So this lapse on the security machinery to successfully arrest, apprehend, and prosecute and convict actual terrorists itself with all these things happening does give us serious doubts.
So what are you saying? It's not ineptitude, it's omission, deliberate omission.
Deliberate omission. Serious, deliberate omission. That you can take that to the bank.
Do you buy the theory? I mean, there's a story that has been circulating that some of these attacks or explosions have been stage managed by security forces. Precisely. I buy it, and I buy it 99.9%. Because I am one person who has engaged intelligence right from the director, a police, every CID, every facet of the Kenyan security machinery for the last 7 years from 2006. Not one single advice that we gave and concerns we had was taken into consideration and acted upon. Let me give you, for example, an example. It's Lee. With all these problems we have there, there's only one Somali-speaking intelligence officer.
One.
Only one. Somali-speaking intelligence officer. There's only one Somali-speaking intelligence officer in the refugee camps, 500,000 refugees. I've been telling the Director of Intelligence year in, year out, put in 100 of them, put in 50 of them. They're going to melt into, they're going to become part of the society. They will keep their beards and they will get us the information. We will successfully arrest and get these guys one by one. Nothing like that has been done. So the fact of the matter is, do you expect somebody with a Luo feature, Kikuyu feature, to go into the refugee camps in the DAP area and mix up with the refugees and get you this information? Of course. It's impossible.
Okay, fine. But you see, the thing is that, what you're describing sounds like you've made suggestions which have not been followed up on. But to then take that and extrapolate that the government is deliberately fueling insecurity is a bit of a stretch of the imagination. You're accusing the Kenyan government of killing its own people to further some political view to, to lobby Western support.
Congregate ourselves to America.
Precisely. And for two reasons.
Where do you get the evidence for that?
You see, it doesn't take rocket science. You don't have to be a genius from outside this universe for you to see that there is this connections, and when there's no action on the part of the security, when there's no action on the part of the people who are supposed to keep us secure, then what comes out?
So it's possible. No, hang on. So it's possible for us to have terrorists who are non-Somali, but if those same terrorists attack an establishment, throw bombs in public service vehicles, then it becomes an act of the government.
Let me tell you, it's possible some of those things are there, but let me tell you one thing. Those of you who remember in the 60s and the 70s who have read about it, even if you did not live in that time, for an African dictator or a despot to validate his relationship with the West, he had to shout communists.
Yeah, that's logical. That was the
logical then. Right now, whether you are a Muslim leader, or you are a Christian leader, or you don't have any faith, and you want to charm your way into the West because you have your issues of either human rights or democracy or corruption, or in the case of us, genocide against our own people, then it comes in very handy. Let me be very honest with you. And the things tie up. I have a situation in which in Dadaab comes residents who were refugees went and informed on Al-Shabaab operatives there. The police came, he was arrested, he was taken in.
The informer was arrested?
No, the actual Al-Shabaab terrorist himself, who they say was the one who was blowing up security officers and everybody else. The guys went there. The local people will tell you they paid their way through, but somehow he got out. And they went and executed the refugee leaders one by one. One particular lady they also attempted on her life. She escaped because her car was blown up, but she did not die herself. She had to be moved out of the country immediately by the UNHCR and given a residential status in Canada. And that's how it is.
Would you blame that on government or on corruption?
You blame on corruption, but I don't think corruption alone is that, because when you inform on site things, what you expect is a serious overhaul, officers to be taken in there, immediate actions to be taken to remedy the situation. It's not happening. And we're dealing with people at the top. When I tell you, as the Deputy Speaker, I was dealing with the people in the security machinery right at the top. Now, let me give you another example.
Yes.
There was one of those guys who was trained as part of the Somali militias to basically, the militia that's fighting alongside our working forces. And he was supposed to take a truckload of bullets and other things to one of their camps. And he diverted this, took it to the Al-Shabaab and sold it to them. The guy comes back to Nairobi, listen to me carefully, puts up a very lavish wedding for himself in Nairobi. Other concerned Kenyan Somalis go and inform the security machinery on the same. The fellow is arrested, he is in police custody, and he gets out. That person pays his way through and he's nowhere. Now they tell you they're looking for him. So you wonder, a whole truckload of bullets, armaments, whatever, the guy takes it to Al-Shabaab from our own ordinance here. And all that our security forces can do is to plant, let me be honest with you, simple logic will tell you. If I want to go and stockpile arms in a mosque and radicalize the young men, then I'm thinking of 2,000, 3,000 young men, and you put up guns for them, you put up grenades for them, you put up bullets for them to go and fight. But do you go put in one G3 gun in that place as the one you're going to use to either overturn a country, overthrow a country, or carry out a mayhem on another whatever supposed targets? No. It is simple logic. They went in there, you desecrate a place of worship with your shoes. We don't go into the mosque as Muslims with our shoes. The Jews in Israel, with all the problems they have with the Palestinians, they never walk into the mosque. They wait for the Muslims, the Palestinians outside the mosque. Or they send in officers who are Muslims themselves, the Druze and other, who are serving in the forces, to go in. But you can't go in there. They desecrate a place with hundreds of soldiers, and they come out with one G3, wielding one G3 and saying, yeah, we found the gun. we found the gun. This is the gun which was being stockpiled there. It's nonsense.
Let me ask you a follow-up question.
And you have a sheikh. You have a sheikh who was on the radar of the ATP, anti-terrorist police. I engaged myself, the leader of the anti-terrorist police, on that particular sheikh to find out exactly what is the issue. There was basically, they talked about him talking about radicalization. We said, show us the evidence. He took the entire summons that he was giving in CD forms and taken to the enters. And that's years back. They went into his house the other day, inspected the house. There were people who were there also from the family. Nothing was there. Later on, some 3 officers come in there, and the wife finds one of them trying to plant a grenade under the dining table, and then he puts it on the table and says, "What is this?" How do you, as a manufacturer of weapons and a radical sheikh clergy who is on the radar of the government, decorate your dining table with 2 grenades in that place? You know what I mean? And reliably, I'm told that's part of the ordinance of the country, because any expert will tell you which ordinance it comes from, and invariably it can be coming from the king.
What is your theory or explanation for the mysterious deaths of some of those sheikhs, including Makaburi?
Makaburi has tons and tons of evidence against him.
Yes.
All you need to do is bring the guy to court, hold him in there, and spend the rest of his life in jail. Serious. And what you can rest assured, which has also been experimented with many other countries, including Guantanamo Bay, when somebody is there for 2 or 3 years, the possibility for reform is massive. Makaburi was not one of those top scholars in the religion. As a matter of fact, I don't think he was even a scholar in the religion. And once, these other scholars engage these people over time, they realize their folly and the mistakes that they were making. And they completely change their ways, and in the process they're able to give you a lot of information. Anybody who has a terrorist inclinations is much better off being in custody than dead. But then look at him. They kill him in cold blood. They kill Rogo in cold blood. They kill Samiri in cold blood. They kill Bahero. I don't know how many of them, there are 10 or 15 of them were killed.
When you say they,
who do you mean?
Security machinery.
You're accusing the security.
Oh yes.
The theory is that security machinery or the Al-Shabaab.
No.
On their own. Or whoever the terrorist group would be.
Al-Shabaab friends of Rogo, the late Rogo.
Well, we had the...
They would never kill him. Right. And by the way, let me tell you one thing. Why is it that they were not able to successfully prosecute one of them and say, this guy was killed by this and arrest either an extremist?
Let me follow you on about this question. You talked about evidence.
Yeah.
You said that you've been involved and engaged with security, with intelligence for years.
For years.
You have given them information,
a lot,
which they did not act on.
A lot.
Where is the evidence?
What do you mean, where is the evidence?
Obviously, if Kamayo comes here,
the
head of intelligence come here today, you say no, he's lying.
Look,
so that's what you say.
I have been talking to Gishangi day in, day out for the last 7 years, from 2006. Let me be honest with you. Gishangi tells me, and you see that maybe there could be some merit in that. He says we give the information.
Yes.
The change of the act itself or the law governing the functions is no longer a special branch of the ARI days. The National Security Intelligence itself is a body that is not an arresting body. It cannot arrest. It gathers information. It gives it to the police. I want to believe him for that, to be very honest with you, because he's done that openly many times.
Okay, but you've also said that the security forces have taken out Muslim clerics. What evidence do you have for that? Because that's a very... You're full of allegations this morning. Which,
circumstantial?
Circumstantial or substantiated?
Precisely. No, precisely. Tell me Unko was killed by some duo who maybe he was sleeping with his wife and you know what I mean, and because, or maybe one who had a problem with him in politics. It's nonsense. A whole minister in the government cannot be killed by anybody other than the government, because the government takes care of him. You see what I mean? So Unko was killed by the government, and everybody knows that. JM Karim, everybody. To now say this is a tired excuse. How can a sheikh like Makaburi be on the radar of the government for 24 hours literally being followed everywhere he goes. And the only time they don't follow him, they know nothing about him, is when he comes out of a court and he's killed right in front of the court.
Okay, well, the Inspector General of Police was actually on Citizen TV last night, and I think that question was put to him, and he said the matter is in the courts and being investigated.
Every issue with terrorists, also supposed terrorists, even cases of arrest, let me tell you, is that they will tell you, oh, the matter is under investigation. Okay. Every time you're told that the matter is under investigation, or let them have a public inquiry, or let them have, these kind of things. This has been, we've not lived somewhere else.
Let me ask, what sort of responsibility do you want to attach to, the Somali community, which is being accused of being profiled in the security situation we find ourselves in? There have been claims that, a lot of the money used to come in here from piracy. A lot of loot is brought in here through all means, and that is therefore M-Pesa and also the population of aliens of Somali origin has increased, and that's why the soup has, for example, gone into places where they have bought property or they're residing. What level of responsibility do you want to touch?
Let me tell you one thing. Any time a section of a society is endowed with certain qualities and are successful in business, particularly in economic aspects, right from the beginning of mankind itself, there's always a way to see them differently. And the Jews suffered Holocaust, and they suffered pogroms for hundreds and hundreds of years, for no other reason other than the fact that they were different. They were Jews, and the rest of the people were either Christians or other faiths, and because they were successful relatively. So the Somali community itself is a busy community trying to take care of itself in this country, work very hard and make money and pay their bills and take care of their families. There's not a single Somali, I can assure you, who has ever been brought into court for and convicted for trafficking in drug, or rather in being a drug lord. Not in trafficking in arms, not in trafficking in drugs or arms or anything. Money laundering, not a single one. Let me tell you what hawalas are. The hawalas are an ATM, basically. Now that M-Pesa is doing the same ATM that the hawalas used to do, nobody talks of the M-Pesa being a terrorist money.
Sir, you seem to be absolving the Somali community and Somali leadership of any responsibility for the situation they now find themselves in. Is that your position?
The innocent people who find themselves in the situation they're in there, yes. Like you cannot be taken in for the crimes of a Kikuyu bank robber.
Okay,
you see what I mean? 90% or 80% of everybody who robs banks in this country might be coming from one community in central Kenya. That does not say that the Kikuyu community must tell us who these bank robbers are, who are right amongst themselves. And they must tell us. For example, when you come into forgeries and other crimes in there, it could be from the western side, whether it's Luo or
let's draw some parallels.
You can't profile
Let's draw some parallels then. No, hang on. Let's draw some parallels, because you've talked about the Kikuyu community. Yes. I'll also point you to the Rift Valley when we had the Sabah problems. Yes. And we brought this up actually last week after our show. Take the example of Mungiki. And when we had Mungiki, unfortunately, the state reacted with what some called unnecessary violence. And innocent people lost their lives as a result. The same has happened with the Sabah Land Defense militia. Why do you act as if because people from your community and faith are being targeted, that they're somehow isolated from the experience of other Kenyan communities?
Yeah. I'll explain to you fully. When the security machinery was doing its excesses on the Mungiki, it was doing it on the Mungiki. It was not doing it on the Kikuyu community.
A lot of innocent Kikuyus were killed.
Yes. Let me just finish. They were not rounding up 100,000 Kikuyus and getting some 50 or 40 youths out of that. They were not rounding up entire communities, for example, in any situation and then saying you are the... They were not branding the Kikuyu as the Al-Shabaab. as the Mungiki. They were looking for the Mungiki within the Kikuyu community. And let me tell you something else also. Mungiki was the creation of the state. You know that, and I know that too. Under Moi, it was created by the state. Mungiki was also enjoyed its support by the state that followed and the regime that followed. I don't want to go into some of these extremes, but there's a lot of information out there.
Which is debatable.
Almost every prominent Kikuyu leader have taken an oath with the Mungikis. And that is common knowledge. But basically, again...
So your claims actually.
Oh, no. Let me explain to you. And then, of course, it was a situation gone sour within a cartel. You understand my point? So, Shabab is not a Somali. It's not like the Msumbiji, or you know what I mean, or Congo by force. It's not a defense vigilante of the Somali community that defends the Somali community businesses or interests or the culture. No. It is a body that is radical, that has its own international imports or exports into the Somalis, and they captured the Somali community as hostages. The Somalis have suffered more than anybody else under Al-Shabaab, at the hands of Al-Shabaab. The only leader today who almost lost his life and who is on crutches in the Kenyan parliament is a Somali MP, the Honorable Yusuf Hassan. It's not a Kikuyu MP, it's not a Luo MP, it's not a Luo MP, it's a Somali MP.
Address this perception then that we've seen this response to Operation Usalama because your community feels threatened and targeted. But when other Kenyans have been targeted, we haven't seen this level of response from your community.
We've never seen a community targeted. The only time we had community targeted in this country is after independence, when there was a fallout between Jaramogi and Kenyatta, and the Luo community was targeted. And those days, those of you who remembers, if a Luo comes with a PhD from the Eastern European countries, he is relegated down to a master's. If he comes with a master's, he will be made a bachelor's, and if he comes with a bachelor's, he becomes a diploma holder. And they were targeted in employment, they were targeted in every sense. The Kikuyus might claim also at some stage within Moi's time that they were also targeted. You see what I mean? The only time sections of this country, an entire society, was targeted by the state machinery itself that I recall myself were those two incidents in our history. The other one is, of course, the Somalis at independence and after independence and until today. For the Somalis, it's a perennial thing. It's basically a cash cow. Every after a short while, because we used to talk 15 years ago, we were talking about them being Al-Qaeda. Nobody was ever brought in there with the money that was from Al-Qaeda. For your information, let me tell you, 40-50%, 40,000, 30,000 Somali businessmen are going to relocate from this country now. They will go and relocate somewhere else where people are inviting them with open hands to come and invest.
How are they going to get?
Oh yes, oh yes. They go to everywhere in the continent and outside the continent where the opportunity is there. These people and our own Kenyan Somalis, when they came in there as refugees, they liberated our entrepreneurship mind. I don't know if you remember that. Before that, trading was firmly in the hands of either Mzungu or Muhindi. And today, Garissa Lodge and all these places that they have set up is over 50% non-Somalis. And this is only a fraction of the Somali community in here. These are the ones who carry American passports, Australian passports, European passports, and other diaspora passports. The other ones who do not have legal status here, our act, the Refugee Act, is very clear. We can only arrest them and take them to the refugee camps. We can't take them back to Somalia because they ran away from Somalia because of insecurity.
Okay, fine. Let's come back to the point, though. No.
And then there are the Kenyan Somalis.
Mr. Maalim, let's come back to the point about this mentality that Somalis are somehow unique in the treatment they experience in Kenya. Because the other perception is that we will see your community protest against government action, against government machinery, but never in solidarity with the nation.
Let me tell you one thing. There is no community that has been as patriotic as the Somali community to the cause of this country. Just look back. We tend to have a very short memory. When this constitution was going to be overthrown, and the country itself was going to be overthrown. The only general who had the guts to come out there and pick up a handful of boys, choose, and go and put his own life in risk was General Mohammed. Where were the other generals? Where were the Luo, the Kikuyu, the Kalenjin generals who were there at that time? Let me tell you something else. The other day when we almost became a failed state, what did we have? The police commissioner was Major General Hussein Ali. He would not take even orders from his own ministers because he saw them as politicians. But he protected the constitution and he maintained the stability of the country. The IEBC, when we got into problems, we had to look for a Somali. In the National Assembly, I was there as the deputy speaker. And nobody is going to tell you that I was partisan in the way I ran my own and the way we protected the country, because the difficulty of the moment itself called for a patriot to sit on that chair. And along with Honorable Marende, we executed our role in the best possible way, without becoming partisan in any way. And imagine, we were both from a party that essentially felt, or actually believed, which I still believe, that the election was robbed from us. But we were there again as a nationalist to protect this country because we didn't want to go into the bigger ill of having a failed state.
Okay.
And the Minister for Defense at that most critical times was Haji. Why is it that when there's a problem we are out there to fight for this country, and anytime people want to plug either into our wealth or want to discriminate against us or want to use us for their own international games out there and regional games, then we become the easy target the way the Jews have always been the easy target.
Okay, fine. We'll have to come back to that question after the break. This is Cheche, live on Citizen TV. We're discussing security with a focus on Operation Usalama with the former Deputy Speaker of the 10th Parliament, Farah Maalim. We should have had Senator Kithure Kindiki here because, of course, he supports that operation, but he isn't. We hope that he'll show up. But in any case, your questions are welcome on this topic. Our SMS number is 22422 and our Twitter handle is @Cheche_TV.